Hi, my name is Kelly Gilson. I'm the Executive Director with United Way Oxford, and welcome to our Community United conversation. This is one of our webinar series where we work to shine a light on unignorable social issues here in our community. And I'm so glad that you can join us. And tonight we're going to be learning and talking about encampments. Before we get going, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the land on which I am sitting. I am in our office in Woodstock, Ontario. And so tonight we will begin this meeting by acknowledging that we are on Indigenous land that has been inhabited by Indigenous peoples from the very beginning. As settlers, we are grateful for the opportunity to meet here, and we thank all the generations of people who have taken care of this land for thousands of years. Long before today, as we gather here, there have been Indigenous peoples who have been the stewards of this place. We acknowledge that the land is the traditional territory of the Adenashpik, the Lenape, the Adadrawandran, and the Haudenosaunee. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties. We recognize and deeply appreciate their historic and current connection to this place. We also recognize the contributions of the Métis, Inuit, and other Indigenous peoples have made and are making, both in shaping and strengthening this community in particular, and our province and our country as a whole. As settlers, this recognition of current contributions and historic importance of Indigenous peoples must be clearly and overtly connected to our collective commitment to make the promise and the challenge of truth and reconciliation real in our communities, and in particular, to bring justice for murdered and missing Indigenous women and girls across our country, and in memory of the deceased children and survivors of the Indian residential schools. So thank you very much again for joining us. Before we get into our conversation, I will do a shameless United Way Oxford plug for just a moment. So just so you know, United Way Oxford is 100% local. All of our efforts are directed by a local board of directors. Our community members and volunteers help us make strategic directions. The money we raise in Oxford County stays in Oxford County to benefit those in Oxford County. We are the largest non-government funder of social and human services, and we are really focused in three particular areas: moving people out of poverty and onto possibility, ensuring healthy people and strong communities, and in making sure that families and children are all that they can be. And so we invest in those areas. We provide programming in those areas. We know that it takes a village, and we are so grateful for our community partners that do amazing work across our community to help build a healthier Oxford County for all. We know that these are challenging times, from the economy to employment to homelessness, and so many of the mental health challenges. There are many issues facing people from all walks of life in our community, but together and working with partners and really understanding where there are gaps in the service, we know that we can make a difference and we can help people and give them the supports they need to move forward to a better future. I want to also mention that above and beyond our traditional fundraising, which is what people often think of us, we are really committed to building community capacity, creating awareness, inspiring volunteerism, and overall really promoting understanding. And this is one of the ways that we do this, is through these community conversation series. So if you want to learn more about United Way Oxford and the work that we do, or perhaps to sign up for our monthly newsletter, please visit www.unitedwayoxford.ca to learn a bit more. And as I said, this webinar series, is really a way to shine a light on unignorable social issues facing our community and frankly, every community. And together we are on a learning journey. So sometimes you'll not know, perhaps you'll have a question, you won't know the right language or what to say. I can tell you, I feel the same way. Often this is out of my depth, but I think if we come at it from a perspective of caring and we want to learn more, those little pieces don't really matter. My last little housekeeping piece is that this is a virtual, the virtual world is fantastic, and we've learned that over the last number of years, but it's far from perfect. So we know there's likely to be wandering pets or children in and out, or just, unstable internet, that glitchy piece. This is real life in the virtual world, but it does allow us to come together in a way that we wouldn't be able to otherwise. Tonight, I thank you all at home for joining us and your interest in wanting to learn more. And in particular, I thank our panelists, and I'm going to introduce them in just a moment. Or actually, I'm going to be a bit lazy and have them introduce themselves. We have a few little rules about this evening. They're pretty simple. We are here to learn and to embrace acceptance and inclusion and understanding. So we're going to really learn and hear more about supports and services. We can agree, we can disagree, but we are not going to be disagreeable. And we're going to talk about the topics at hand, but we are not going to reference individuals. This is not about a person or any group in particular that we want to point out. And because of this particular topic, there might be some sort of what people perceive as political references. This is not a politics forum, and we're not going down that rabbit hole. It's only in the context of maybe the discussion. It's not about an individual political party or policy. And last, I will say that this is being recorded and it will be available on our website. You'll also receive a link afterwards for those that are signed up and participating this evening. You are welcome to put your questions in the chat box. And thanks to the amazing Amanda, she will try and field those for us. And we will do our best to address them over our time together this evening. And if there's anything that triggers you or causes any anxiety as we're having our conversation, please reach out, which is 1-866-933-2023. And they are there to support you if indeed you need that. So thank you again for joining us. And now let's meet our panelists, if we may. So beginning, I will just briefly introduce who they are, and then I would like them to actually say a little bit about themselves and their background, their experience, and as well as the organization that they're with, representing, and a bit about the work that they do there. And then after that, we're gonna get into some questions, and we are going to have what I would call a kitchen table conversation so that we can all learn a little more. So let me start by introducing Amanda, who's an outreach worker and the mobile health outreach bus lead from the Oxford County Community Health Center. And Amanda, how about you say a few words about who you are and why you do what you do?
Yeah, hi. Thanks, Kelly. I'm really happy to be here tonight. I'm always happy to share the knowledge that I have, as well as maybe gain some more from some of my colleagues, because you never know what we don't know. So I am the lead for the Mobile Health Outreach Bus. What we do is we are active in the community 5 days a week within Oxford County. We go out to some of the local agencies where people that are unhoused are staying and just congregating and hanging out, and we support them there, as well as we go out to the encampments um, and we support them in the encampments. And I have a great team that rotates and comes out with me. So sometimes I have a nurse with me, sometimes I have someone from CMHA with me, sometimes I have someone from Regional HIV/AIDS from London with me. Someone from Human Services comes out as well. The Woodstock Fire Department educator comes out as well. So we're really the first point of contact for a lot of people that are homeless into CHC's um, into our programs, that then they can access the different things. So yeah, we're that first point of contact a lot of times for people where we build the relationships and then they can trust us. Because a lot of trust has been uh, lost by the time we get to meet some of these wonderful people.
And trust matters.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Val, I'm going to segue over to you. Val is a community outreach worker also with the Oxford County Community Health Center and certainly goes out with Amanda and is really deeply connected in our community. Val, would you like to say a few words of introduction?
Kelly. My name is Val. I'm a community outreach worker at the Oxford County Community Health Center, like Kelly mentioned. I do a lot of connecting with clients more behind the scenes. So once Amanda goes out, a lot of the times they need a lot more support than we could ever imagine. So I'm that person that is able to support them more behind the scenes, doing the paperwork, their resources, as much as we always try to have those resources available in the bus. Sometimes applications might take a little longer, and then we are able to support them with that. And then we can also support people in connecting them with various programs in our agency. So with the housing stability program, which then they can apply for transitional houses. With the outreach program, which would be myself, Amanda, just various system navigation, and different applications, needs, advocacy, IDs. They can also connect with the youth outreach support, which does a similar role with the Oxford Sexual Assault Services, the RAM clinic, which is the Rapid Access Addiction Medicine Clinic, and our dental program. So there are various programs which they can connect it with at CHC. And again, Amanda is like the person going out on the bus with all the other agencies, and that opens up the doors for them to be able to connect to all the services that we can provide them later on.
And that is a lot of services. And we're going to learn a little bit more as we go forward this evening. Patty, I'm going to go over to you. Patty's a peer support coordinator and addictions and mental health worker with the Canadian Mental Health Association, Thames Valley Addiction and Mental Health Services. But for short form this evening, I'm going to refer to it as CMHA because old dogs, old tricks, whatever that might be. So, Patty, would you like to introduce yourself a little?
Thank you. Yeah, my name is Patty, and as Kelly said, I work for CMHA, Thames Valley. I'm a peer support coordinator, so I have lived experience with addiction. And I go out on the mobile health outreach bus with Amanda and sometimes Val out in the Ingersoll community. And we're able to offer different supports to the people who we see. One of the main things that I try to offer to folks, especially in Ingersoll, is the shower program that I run out of the Ingersoll Nurse Practitioners Clinic on Mondays. Because we know sometimes their living arrangements, they can't get that nice, warm, luxurious shower that we all get to obtain every day of our lives. So being able to offer it to them is just one of those little golden nuggets. And then, connecting them with myself on a personal level of addiction and having that lived experience to be able to understand and sit with them and be with them, make them feel valued and heard. And then just different programs within our agency. So if they need like court support or case management or addiction support or walk-in counseling, whatever have them, then I can put in referrals for those different programs that we offer through our agency.
Excellent. And last but definitely not least is Grant. And Grant's a trainer on the parks response to encampments to the Ontario Parks Association to Ontario municipalities. So a different lens, but equally knowledgeable and connected in our community with encampments and what the approaches are. So Grant, would you like to say a few words?
Thank you so much, Kelly. Yeah, so I come at this formally from a position with the City of Toronto Parks Department, whereas through COVID, we obviously saw the encampment situation grow to a point that we couldn't treat it like we used to, where we were always familiar with folks who might be living unhoused in our parks and in our public spaces, and it became to a point that it really required a dedicated team. And so through this process, we developed with one of my esteemed colleagues in Toronto a training program that we now take to municipalities around Ontario. And even we've surpassed beyond the borders of Ontario for a couple of sessions to present to other government teams that consist of parks workers, maybe bylaw, members of council at times, and outreach and social workers, how to work together, how to tear down silos in their approach, how to come at this from a social services lens, because a lot of us in parks, we cut grass and plant flowers, and sometimes when you're dealing with vulnerable population, that's new and sometimes scary for a lot of us. So we try to um, present a wide range of knowledge and our lessons, hard lessons learned, and the mistakes we made in Toronto to hopefully give people a little bit of a boost in how they're approaching their situation in their own hometown. And now I have the good fortune of working with the Oxford Group and with the City of Woodstock Parks Department as the supervisor of forestry.
Excellent. Well, welcome to the community, and thank you. It's a great segue to my first question, which I'll tell you is a very long-winded segue, so you might sit back and have a nap before I finish it. But it really kind of speaks to, it wasn't that long ago where here in Oxford County we would have really thought this is not our issue. We would never have an encampment, right? Like that. It just didn't seem like it was a smaller community issue. It was a big urban city kind of Toronto issue. And now we know that that is not true. So I think we can all agree that homelessness and housing instability is at a crisis point. And it seemed like that became very obvious during the pandemic, but it was really a long while coming. And it represents decades of poor planning, insufficient investments, inadequate government repairs to government funded buildings, stagnant social service increases, limited income, limited funding for mental health and addictions. This is my soapbox, and so much more. So it was all of these things that landed us here. And provincially, the number of individuals, which includes families and seniors as well, of course, experiencing homelessness or housing insecurity has grown by 25% since 2022. So significant increases. It's an issue affecting people from every community, from all walks of life, from all ages and stages. And now we see or read perhaps about encampments on the news, et cetera. They're located in every municipality as well. So as professionals who are working in this human service area and who are really deeply connected to individuals who are living in encampments, and you're visiting encampments, how have you seen these struggles grow, that people are facing, grow over time? And how have you seen these encampments grow as people try and address that? And I'll just open it up, Amanda, maybe to jump in first, but the rest of you are all welcome to.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Kelly. Yeah, so it's really, there's so many different reasons why they've grown. So for us to get them all tonight isn't going to happen, but there's reasons like the housing market. We know it's gone crazy, so people can't afford to buy, so they're holding down the spots that would have been for a lower income family or a lower income person to move into. So that's one reason. There's the renovate. So the landlord is evicting someone so they can renovate, and to find another place that's been affordable isn't around anymore. We haven't really built housing. So RGI, rent geared to income, housing in for single individuals in a very long time. We are
Decades.
starting to, yeah, we're starting to, but it's been so long. The increase in incomes. So your Ontario Works and your ODSP they haven't really gone up in years to be able to afford to eat and pay rent. So they have to pick, am I paying rent this month or am I going to eat this month? So that's a couple of them. Val, do you want to pipe in and
Yeah, so I think one of the things that Kelly mentioned which really accelerated everything was COVID. We definitely would have seen an increase maybe a few years from now, maybe at the same rate, we can't be sure. But a big thing was COVID, loss of income. Many people who had loss of income that or had businesses and they lost their business, then also lost their income and ended up homeless. Then with the amount of people who ended up out on the streets, the lack of supports, the lack of access to supports, I think that really accelerated things. And we saw a big jump from how it used to be to how it is now because of that. The it was a great like I lived in London at the time, and you could really tell the moment during COVID where people would be like, I don't have an income anymore. I'm living on the street. I don't have support here. I'm not able to access different resources. It just made it a lot more difficult, and it just made it very prominent because the
Mhm.
jump was so quick.
And I agree. That was my experience as well, in that we saw folks, again, there was homelessness, especially in major centers. It was always a factor. But COVID really was the catalyst where we started to see homeless communities get entrenched in public spaces, and where people were staying in one place for a very long period of time and creating a community amongst themselves and trying to figure out how to survive and how to access those resources.
Mhm.
Because an encampment really is a sense of community
Yeah.
for many. Patty, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, so I was just gonna say, like going back to the rental piece and the inflation in the prices of rent in the housing market, we also have to think about like the barriers to the folks of getting those like credit checks or not being able to bring their pet with them because now a lot of places won't take pets. Or we can even talk about it's not even a place to rent, it's a room to rent, right? So the size, and maybe you don't get along well with others or something, and you want your own space because you need your own space because that's the part of your wellness, right? So there's so many different things that are happening in today's world that just weren't happening pre-COVID.
Mhm. I think that gives people a sort of at least some context
Mhm.
to what has sort of happened in really short order as it's escalated
Mhm.
significantly.
Mhm.
And so, um, while we obviously homelessness and encampments go hand in hand, we're going to focus really a lot of our conversation tonight on encampments themselves. We have done some of these community united conversations on homelessness and as well as mental health challenges, food insecurity, and they're all available on our website if you'd like to go back and watch, or on Rogers Cable as well. But tonight it's about encampments. And what I want to say is this is not about shelter systems, but because of the conversation, we probably will be referring to the shelter through the evening. And so, we're going to talk a little bit about barriers and why the barriers there might prevent someone from going, and therefore the encampment is maybe where they may land. And so here in Oxford County, we have the Inn, which is in Woodstock, serving the entire county. And we also have the Inn Out of the Cold, which opened last year in Tilsonburg, that goes from November to March. And both of those are run by Operation Sharing, who do, an incredible job in working with people who are impoverished, and certainly with homelessness and the shelter. But we know one size doesn't fit all. So when you're talking about barriers, can you maybe just help us understand what do you mean by a low barrier shelter, or what that needs to look like, or barrier free? So what does that mean?
So
Yeah,
I'll pop in here. Sorry.
of course.
One of the barriers I would say with our shelter system is it's in two different locations in Woodstock. So our main shelter. So they sleep in one location and then they have to pack up everything that they own during the day and move over to the other location. And then at the end of the day, they move from that location back over to where they can sleep again. So there's nowhere for them to store items or anything like that during the day. So that's why you'll see a lot of people with their shopping carts, because
Yeah.
that's how they have to bring their stuff back and forth all day. Everything they own, they have to carry with them. They have nowhere safe to put them. Some other things are like pets. So our shelter does not allow pets unless they can prove that they have all their vaccination, which we know unfortunately is a cost that many of our individuals cannot afford. So people have dogs before becoming homeless, Some have them like when they're in their apartments, become homeless, still keep them. Some get them while they're homeless for security reasons, companion reasons, lots of different reasons. Um, some don't access it just the way it's laid out sometimes too. Um, if you've never been in it, it's one room, so women on one side, men on another. So if you're someone that has trauma in your life, sleeping in an environment like that, even if in an environment, if it was all the same sex, all in the same room with multiple people, can be triggering for people. So there's lots of different reasons. Val, did you want to add a couple?
Yeah, I wanted to just bring up that there's no one size fits all type of thing. So even in our daily life, what might work for Amanda might not work for myself and my family.
Exactly.
So
Mhm.
we cannot expect that one shelter can fit everyone's needs. And I don't think there's ever going to be a shelter that is barrier free anywhere because they are living with other people. And there needs to be some rules for that. We can definitely strive for low barrier to the best of our abilities. And some of those are some of the things that Amanda mentioned. Um, some other things is we don't have a youth shelter. We don't have a family shelter. So it's just as a community, it's difficult if you're with your family, if you're with little ones, if you are a youth, you don't have a place to stay just for the night while you figure out what to do. So
Mhm.
those are some of the things that might be available in bigger communities, Toronto, London, Kitchener, Waterloo. Um, and it just goes back to resources. But yeah, I don't think there's no barrier. All of those have some type of rules.
Mhm.
And sometimes it just doesn't work for everyone. We cannot expect everyone to need the same.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
I
your
do want to
point is
mention
one
too that,
size does not fit all.
yeah,
And it doesn't fit all for everything and anything, right?
I do want to mention too that we do have DASO, so Domestic Abuse Shelter of Oxford, for anyone leaving a domestic. So that is an emergency shelter there too. But unfortunately, again, we only have one for all of Oxford County. So if there's not room, we do like our community's great at figuring things out, but sometimes we just can't figure things out.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
And
correct me if I'm wrong, Amanda, that's only for female identifying individuals.
Yes.
right, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it speaks to these good organizations are doing the very best they can with the limited resources and facilities that they have. Like they're making the best of what they've got,
Mhm.
but it's just under resourced in lots of ways as well.
I think
Um,
it's important to note, if I can just add one
yeah,
final thing on
please.
that, is that getting somebody inside is really the first step, right? So getting into somebody into temporary shelter is great, and maybe we've helped them that day. But it really is about then the long-term wraparound services and counseling that is, again, a resource and a cost that we need to put in, because often we find that we've even gotten somebody successfully housed. Maybe we've even gotten somebody an apartment, and I am referring more to my previous experience in Toronto, but then we find them again back in the park a year later. And it's because they weren't able to access maybe that wraparound service or that extra counseling, or even if someone's been living outside 2, 3, 4 years, all of a sudden adjusting to an inside contained space takes time to adjust to. And if you can't quite get there on your own, you might find yourself living back in the park again.
I think, you know what, from a United Way Oxford perspective, I would say that's how we have really, over the last number of years, moved into investing heavily in the wraparound supports and services provided by some of our wonderful partners, because and the transition housing, because we know it's not just a question of housing, it's the supports that people need to get them ready for housing, to keep them housed and to move them forward. And it's sometimes it's just a little bit of help and sometimes it's a lot. But that's a very good point. Now all of you have been out in encampments. Your work is to really connect with people in different ways that might be living and staying in the encampments, and the agencies you support are there to help make a positive difference for them. Um, can you help us understand like who might who might be living in an encampment, not who the individual, but how did they land there? And I guess really tell us a little bit about the incredible variety of people from variety of backgrounds who are finding themselves in that position. Patty, do you want to maybe start?
Sure. So I mean, there's a broad variety of folks who are living this way. It could be from a young adult to a middle-aged adult to a senior. It could be somebody you're walking downtown and you don't even know. They look just as great as anybody else in this today's world, right? Showered, clean shaved, whatever have you. But they could be going to live in a park at nighttime, right? So there's a broad variety of many different individuals who are experiencing homelessness.
I think too
Yes.
often we have a misconception that, we think of someone living on the streets or living in the parks that that person's automatically, addicted to drugs, or maybe that they can't shower or they can't get their stuff together to get a job. Where often we find that it's, someone like any of us who maybe had a business, had a partner, had a family, maybe through the tough times of COVID or the tough economic times that we're having, they lose their business. And because they lose their business, maybe that creates challenges in their home life. And then next thing they know, maybe they still have a van or something. If they were a carpenter or a tradesperson or whatever it might be, they can live in their van for a little while until they can no longer afford to keep up the van. And then next thing they know that they're in a tent in the park or whatever their situation might be. One participant in one of my classes put it the best, and I do like to share this message because it really stuck with me, is that a lot of the people I present to and a lot of us here, we have good paying jobs, we have government jobs, we're supervisors, whatever our titles might be. A lot of us are closer to homelessness than we are to being millionaires. And if you kind of think about where you are on that spectrum, it really doesn't take a lot for one thing to go wrong and it could snowball into something else. And next thing you know, you don't know where to turn for help.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and I
a
would,
health problem, and a job problem. Not everyone has families that can help. Like, there's lots of reasons how that could snowball quickly, right? What do
yeah,
they say? The average person's two paychecks away from a crisis.
and
Amanda,
I
sorry?
think so a lot of the people that are living in encampments um, are not the people that you think are living in the encampment. They're people that you don't know. So we see the people that are homeless downtown or around the churches, things like that with their carts. Those don't tend to be the people living in the encampments. The people that are living in the encampments are not the ones that you're seeing. They stay in their encampment throughout the day. They'll go get resources, come back. That's their home. So that's where they're staying.
Yeah.
And it's amazing what they look like. I can tell you that.
Yeah, I think a big part of it is just I they're so resilient. Everyone we meet is so resilient, so understanding, so caring. They're in encampments because they build a community. They care for each other. They care to know how each other is doing, helping each other out, even helping us out. If we need anything, they're like, are you okay? Can I help you carry something? They're really caring people and they're human. They're human like anyone else, but their resiliency, the creativity that people have while you're out there, it's admirable.
I think that goes a long way in helping us dispel some myths or misunderstandings that we might have about the who, the what, the why. Um, and it really not only would people be incredibly resilient and creative, but it really is a sense of community and safety and looking after each other. Do you want to weigh in a little bit on why that matters, that relationship with others and that safety net they can bring to each other?
I
I
think,
can
go ahead, Val.
I think a big part of it is the sense of community. Just like any of us, we have our support system. We have the people that we can count on, the people that we feel safe around, that we know are going to be there for us. That's what they look for. They look for a sense of community, of people who they know that they can trust, who are safe around each other, and who knows they have their back. It's a really big piece of it because they are open, like their houses are open, their homes where they stay are open to anyone and they look out for each other.
They're in very vulnerable positions, and so they need each other to help support them. And they have the biggest hearts and have trouble asking for help. So to have somebody there that they know will just help them is a big thing.
And I think inside these communities, they're as diverse as any other community, right? You have people of all different walks of life, all different interests, all different abilities, and as my colleagues here have said, like they're there to support each other, keep each other safe, and figure out how to get through to your next day.
We see this whether it's on social media or through many other channels, a lot of stigma associated for towards those that are unhoused. And sometimes it can be pretty vicious. Um, how does that impact the people that you work with? And maybe Patty, I'll ask you. I mean, for some, I have to believe they must feel that they're treated like they're less than human. And as we've heard, they are no different than the rest of us. And this is a sense of community, and we need to break down that stigma.
Sure. So when we talk about stigma, we're talking about like the mental health, the distress, the addictions, the homelessness. So you can imagine these folks are in a continuous state of displacement. They're experiencing consistent barriers to accessing different supports, whether it be through a mental health agency, an addiction agency, a doctor, a shelter, whatever that looks like. They're constantly experiencing different barriers. And so you can only imagine the message that they're receiving, which is essentially no place to stay, right? So they continuously are bouncing in this constant cycle of the in between, from different services, trying to access support, trying to figure out their next step, trying to get well if they're unwell, trying to, maybe obtain a house or a roof over their head or whatever that looks like. But consistently receiving this message of no place to stay and constantly feeling displaced is a big part of the stigma. And just hearing, conversations like you had said online and seeing those things if they have access to technology or whatever have you. We just have to keep it in our heads that support looks different for everyone. Somebody might just need a roof over their head versus somebody who needs consistent supportive housing with mental health and addictions, right? So treating everybody with kindness and being compassionate and acting like it's the first time you're meeting them and giving them all that support that maybe they didn't receive from the last person that they had spoke to or opened up to, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think about that too, that how dehumanizing that is over time, right? If you're never looked at in the eye, if no one ever shakes your hand, if no one ever says, hello, my name is, that I think that does start to affect you over time and makes you feel like an other, like an outsider. And not
Less
that I
than.
think yeah, I don't think everybody should run up to the next person they see on the street and give them a big hug. I mean, if someone is dealing with maybe some trauma or maybe a brain injury, they might need a little bit more space, and that's okay. But at the same time, saying hello to somebody, or when I try to engage with somebody, hello, my name is Grant, what's your name? Just goes a long way in even de-escalating a situation before you even get started, because it puts you on an equal playing ground with somebody and make you feel like equals.
Mhm. I attended a session a few years back, and there
Just
was a
walking by and
woman.
smiling and saying,
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Amanda.
morning, saying good morning.
Mhm. I was just gonna say, I attended a session a few years back with a woman who was a survivor of sex trafficking. And one of her comments that really stayed with me was that for the few years where she was in a situation where she had no control and was living in a horrific situation, not once did anyone ever refer to her by her name. Like, so it was so dehumanizing, right? She didn't even have a name. And so you're right, saying hello, how are you? Just a smile can go a very long way. We know that. Um, can I ask for the ladies that are actually going out in the encampment to provide programs and services, either through the bus or to connect to other community supports, because we know it takes a village. Tell us a little bit about what do you do? What kind of programs can you offer? What kind of help can you share to folks that are living in encampments or perhaps chronically unhoused? Like what's your day like when you're doing this very good work?
Brenda, do you want to take it away and we'll jump in on anything?
Say that too.
So yeah, so when we're out, we bring supplies with us. We're out being out there and supporting in the right here, right now. So we can't support long term. We can't change policies. We can't do any of that. But what can I do right here, right now to make your day that little bit better? That maybe tomorrow when I come back, we can look at something else and eventually building the trust that that's when I can hand them off to Val if they're ready for getting their ID and or looking for housing, then we can connect them with our housing team. So when I say we bring supplies out, we bring things like snacks, hats, mitts. If we have sleeping bags, we're runoff donations. So whatever we have, we bring. When a nurse is out, we do wound care. I also do a little bit of wound care when I'm out. We support people with like antipsychotic injections for someone that's been released from from Woodstock Hospital to homelessness and needs someone to support them during their regimen. We're able to get them through nursing and stuff. Some of them having human services out with us once a week if they have any questions regarding their Ontario work and so that's a lot of source of income for many of them. If they have any questions about that, the Ontario Works worker, the human service worker, is able to address them right then and there and look into it. Am I missing any? Oh, Woodstock Fire Department. Yeah, when they come out. So Lisa is their fire educator at the Woodstock Fire Department. Her and I go out twice a month and we actually go into the encampments and she asks them, how are you staying warm? How are you cooking? They invite her into their structures and show her. And then she's like, okay, that's great, but can we do this to keep you a little safer? So she's often, giving suggestions on how to keep them a little safer, again, in the right here, right now.
Right.
Did I catch them all?
CMHA.
What do you do when you come out, Patty?
So as I shared kind of at the beginning, I am able to speak to the folks based off of my lived experience. I can offer them different referrals through different programs that our agency offers. So whether that be housing, court, case management, brief case management, urgent peer support, there's a seniors program, our SOAR program as well, addiction support. And then besides that, we run some programs through our agency. For example, I run an addictions group. I also run a group for the family members of their loved one who's addicted to substances. I also run the shower program out of the Ingersoll Nurse Practitioners Clinic. We run some wellness socials out of the Ingersoll and Tilsonburg Library. We run a wellness recovery action plan group to help individuals revert from crises. So lots of different programs that I can introduce them to and hopefully allow them to walk through our doors and make that a little bit easier for them, knowing a friendly face on the other side, because we all know that that sometimes is the hardest step. So knowing that I might be on the other side or that I will be on the other side of the door allows them to access the support in a comfortable way.
That has to make the world a difference for folks who've built up a relationship and trust with you,
Mhm.
because that, I mean, that is so important to all of us to have that comfort. Um,
Another thing I want to mention is with public health, Kelly, we're
yes.
a point of access for their harm reduction supplies. So Val does a lot of that in the background and putting together the kits that we give out of the new pipes and new needle kits and stuff like that. So everyone is getting clean supplies when they need them from us out on the bus.
And naloxone.
Yes.
Oh, and yes.
Also important. And so it actually, that's a pretty good segue, because my next question is we hear a lot about needing to meet people where they're at. And it might be easy for someone who's not in this world, who's, really not connected, to think, well, we can't be giving harm reduction things. We need people to get better, and they need to, change their situation. But that is not the reality, and that is not how things work. And so meeting people where they're at is what you all do so well. Would someone like to explain a little bit about that and why that really does matter?
Yeah, I can speak on that. I think a big part of harm reduction and a bit of a misunderstanding that it is with that is just we are simply providing them access to pipes, needles, and any new supplies that they might need. A big part of that is the connection piece. So, harm reduction is based on meeting people where they're at. That harm reduction is is the perseverance of life so they can stay alive for when they're ready to make the decision of I'm ready to go to rehab, I'm ready to go to detox. But if people are not alive that far in, then they're not able to make that decision at any point. So some things that are super important for meeting people where they're at is understanding their perspective. We really need to understand where they're coming from, their paths of life, their different experiences, respecting their readiness. So respecting that they might not be ready for help today or to access supports, but they might be ready in a week from now or in years from now. But just knowing that the supports are there for when they're ready, being not judgmental, we're not judging whether they want to access any supports now, what they're telling us. We're not judging their choices. We're not judging them because they are a human being and they are able to take those choices. Um, Support at their level. So everyone might need supports very differently. Some people might be able to access to make it to appointments easier than others.
Mhm.
So if they're not able to make it to appointments, then what barrier can we eliminate? Are we coming to them? Are we sending them appointment reminders? Um, just creating a safe space, really. A lot of it is creating a safe space that they know that they can come to myself. They know that they can go to Patty, to Amanda. Like Grant has spoken about creating a safe space with them where they can feel like they can talk to it and then be able to communicate. And just being patient, flexible, being empathetic. That is meeting people where they're at, really. The flexibility of being able to accommodate people and their needs because everyone has different needs. So again, just appointment based. If we need to pick someone up or meet someone where they live, if that is going to eliminate the barrier and that is going to allow them to access support, then that's what we want to do.
Mhm.
And it really needs to be a housing first approach. I mean, I don't know if anybody on the panel has ever had to quit cigarettes, but it took me years to quit cigarettes, and I'm not making light of it. If I needed to access housing and the barrier on me was that I first had to quit cigarettes before I could access housing, how long would that take me, and how much more vulnerable of a situation am I going to be in by the time I get down that journey, right? So we need to get folks inside into a safe space, and then we can help them with whatever other ailments or whatever other services they may require.
Absolutely. That housing first model matters. And again, that's why we are so committed to transitional housing, because we know we need housing and the supports with it to help people just get their feet back underneath them and some time to move forward. Because if you don't know where you're going to stay, if you don't have regular meals and you don't know where your next meal is coming from, and you don't know if you're going to freeze to death tonight, it's really hard to figure out the rest of the stuff, right? Big life plans, when you're caught in the here and now. Um, so we have a question I'm going to ask you, but it kind of goes with a question that I had here. So let me start by saying, just saw recent stats that they're estimating there are over 80,000 people experiencing homelessness in Ontario, and that many are living in one of the 1,400 encampments in our province. We know that encampments are not a solution, and I want to talk to Grant about that in a moment. But before I get to the next part of my question, I'm going to ask a question from one of our members of the audience, and that is, how many encampments do you believe are currently in existence here in Oxford County? Anybody want to
Whoa,
take a
that's
guess?
always the question. I get asked that all the time. And it's really hard to answer because some people will have two encampments, one at one end of town, one at the other. So you don't know which is which, like where are they staying. Some will have an encampment, but when it does get frigid out, they'll go inside for a week or they'll stay at a friend's for a week. Beginning of the month, they're able, when they have an income, stay at a motel for a week. But then they do have somewhat of a shelter. So is it active when we see it? Is it so us knowing what's active and what's not is really hard sometimes. Um, we have a great team of a bunch of us that sit in the background and chat. Was biweekly, but now we're going to monthly and about which ones are active, which ones are not in Woodstock. So I would say, if I had to guess, there's probably 45 or 50, Grant, would you say, different little spots? And again, it depends on what you count as an encampment. Is if there's three tents together, is those three tents three encampments, or is all of that an encampment?
Yeah, it's tough by definition, and as you say, folks who are transient by nature,
Yeah.
or even I think more past practice. I think a lot of municipalities are coming around to an updated way of approaching this, which is, moving people along only exacerbates the problem, right? So I think originally the idea was that, oh, someone's living in the park. We need to move them along. We need to get them out of there. But then we have no idea where that person has gone or now how more vulnerable we've made them, right? So it's definitely, I think there's something to be said for, at least if we know where people are, then we could manage that space, whatever that might require, if it's, picking up garbage or keeping down a fire load to keep the area safe. But then we can also engage with them and figure out, what do you need to get beyond this, right? Instead of just chasing people from park to park and forcing them to start all over again every time. Again, Amanda's out in the field. I've been out in the field with Amanda. Amanda has a great rapport with people. She knows almost everybody in town, but even still, it's challenging to try and figure out who's where and what's happened since you saw them last week, because anything could happen, like, for all of us, right?
Mhm. Grant, that was actually the next part of my question was, I mean, while we know that encampments are not a great solution, perhaps, we also know dismantling them, especially in a really heavy-handed way, is also not a solution. And we had a previous police chief here who, before this was really an apparent problem, so pre-pandemic, but when we were starting to really see a change, was very, very vocal in saying we cannot police our way out of this situation. This is a human crisis. The police are part of the equation and part of the solution, but this is not a policing. This police can't solve the problem, and moving people from point A to point B without supports is not solving a problem at all.
Yeah, even if you want to look at it strictly as a municipality or strictly even as a taxpayer that supports that municipality, it's
Mhm.
not dollars well spent, right? Because if we have someone who's vulnerable, someone maybe has an issue with hoarding, so they're collecting a lot of material, and then it's winter, so we're trying to keep ourselves warm, and who knows what heat source they have access to try and keep themselves warm. And we've seen that accidents happen and fires happen.
Mhm.
So now, hopefully, we've helped that person, or hopefully, we've maybe moved them inside even temporarily. And now we have to clean that footprint. And we've seen it's been in the news in Woodstock, and we've been involved in already very large scale cleanups that cost a lot of money. If we haven't helped that individual and they've now gone to another public space, that situation is going to repeat itself. And there is no end to that until you have a final destination for somebody that can address all their needs, hopefully be as low barrier as possible, to help them into the next phase of their journey of their life. Because chasing people from park to park, again, not only is it the expense of cleanup time and time and time again with no resolution, but we've also seen, and in my experience, I've been in riots in King Street in Toronto, because of being combative and having a strong, heavy militant police presence, where the initial idea was that we need to clear people out of the park. Well, again, if you have nowhere for folks to go, and if there's really well-intentioned advocates that want to protest that, and it can turn very ugly very quickly. So we found by taking a softer approach, by like what my good colleagues have said here, by bringing the services to people, meeting them where they're at, and identifying what their needs are, we're able to clear parks with much less expenditures, with no violence, with no conflict whatsoever, by just connecting with people, understanding what their needs are, and addressing them on a client by client basis.
And
Not only is that more
like Grant
compassionate,
said,
it's more of, it really is, it makes economic sense. It is better return on investment for the taxpayer dollars. Go ahead,
and
Amanda.
like Grant said, Kelly, um, it's really when we're moving them from one location and then we don't know where they go, then that's putting their lives at risk too, because that's making them even more vulnerable because now we don't know where to find them to bring them any services to support them in any way. So now they're left vulnerable, could be by themselves because someone could have left them behind and went somewhere else. So we've really shaken their world, so at least if we know where they are, then we can support them.
Absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. Patty, we just heard about this stuff and how sometimes people will gather lots of stuff. So whether we see individuals who are, on the streets in downtowns, perhaps with shopping carts or just carrying lots of things, a wagon, or at the encampments, we certainly see that there's stuff, there's an accumulation perhaps of things. Can you tell us why we believe that that's the image we see, like but why people are gathering stuff, like why that matters to people? Can you help us understand that?
So, like we were just discussing about like moving people along and all that kind of stuff. Um, Imagine yourself being told you have to vacate your premises and you have no time to get anything and you're left with nothing. Well, you're going to want to collect things that are going to help you and support you in your living circumstances. So, whether that be wood, poster boards, blankets, maybe a couch, different pots and pans or cooking supplies, whatever that looks like, those things are going to accumulate. And sometimes, as my colleagues have said here, they may not frequent one encampment. They might go to their other encampment, or they might be a night traveler where every day they have a different location. So that means of transportation is the shopping cart or the wagon, where they're able to carry all of their belongings that they value. We may not see it as a value, but those are their stuff that they value because it's all that they have, right? So those are very important things to them. And if we are continuously moving them along and taking their things away from them, like Grant had said, it's going to be a repetitive process. So we're going to see bigger and bigger things and more things collected for their next place that they're going to live in or stay around, until we provide them with those resources to help the trauma that they've experienced, maybe the mental health concerns that they have, for example, hoarding, whatever that looks like. So we need to be able to support their needs and meet them again where they're at along their journey and be with them.
Mhm. And again, one size does not fit all. And you've mentioned so many different services that we are blessed as a community to have. And we know that there are still gaps, but there are many. And people are doing their darndest to serve. But sometimes I think people believe these are just duplications of services, but they're often complementary, coordinated kinds of services. So it's they might look like there's two groups doing the same thing, but if they're doing it on different days or in different locations, they're really not the same, right? They're trying to meet people again where they're at. We have a really interesting question about, by chance, are you familiar with any sort of best practices specific to encampments that might be coming out of the Scandinavian countries, because they're often considered to be leaders in some of these social issues? It's a very good question. Any chance anyone has some information on that?
It is
That
a
was a
Actually,
great
long
question.
shot.
Yeah.
yeah, I do. I'm aware that Finland has a housing first perspective. So they use social funding for, I'm not sure if they do taxes or how exactly their economic situation is, but they fund housing through social support. And their whole idea is housing first. When someone is homeless, they will do housing first, put them in a house, which ideally that's what we would like. And that would be great. Uh, but yes, they usually lead in this type of thing, so they've been working on it much longer.
Mhm.
I'm not
But
sure
I
about
feel
other countries, but that's the one that I do know.
right.
And I
And
don't
I
want to
think
speak
we're trying to do a housing first approach to the best of our ability with limited housing options, right?
Yeah.
and I don't want to speak out of turn, but I do feel like there are countries out there that approach things like prisons or approach things like homelessness in a much more valuable and contributing way. In that, a lot of the folks we meet outside living in public spaces, for one reason or another, ended up there because they currently don't have the capacity to manage their own affairs on a daily basis, whatever that might be, getting to appointments, holding down a job, whatever the situation might be. So I think there's a reality in thinking about that, not only housing, it's not building a house and being like, here you go, here's your house, move in. It's about having somewhere where someone can live and maybe even contribute to work, help, assist. If you're a mentor to others who are just coming into the system, whatever it might be. And we are very likely to encounter folks that may never be able to, on their own, manage their everyday affairs. So if we can start thinking about housing as a community and giving somewhere where people can live and maybe live forever and maybe contribute and maybe play another role where they feel like they have value and purpose, I think that's, for me, a great way to prevent someone from repeating or getting back into a situation of homelessness if they feel like there's somewhere they belong and somewhere that they can contribute.
Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well
Because
said.
going back to Finland, they do have a rehabilitation prison lens. So it's all about rehabilitation and the sense of community and the wraparound supports that come with it.
So can we talk maybe for a moment about how incredibly cold it has been for the last few weeks? Um, you know, for many people, were complaining about going from the house to the car in that little trek across the driveway about how cold it is. I can't imagine what it must be like to be living in that. And I know that, you know, where you can, you encourage people to go to the shelter, especially in those extreme weather situations. But could you talk a little bit about what that might be? Because I think it really matters. Those are potentially life and death situations for folks.
Yeah, so I'll talk about that. It is absolutely extremely been cold out there. Um, they're not necessarily choosing to stay there and not go somewhere warm. Many of them have different ways of heating where their structures that they're in. Not always the safest for sure, but they have different ways and they do it as safe as they can. If they go to the shelter, they are worried about what will happen to their encampment. Where will their stuff, will it be here if I come back? Even one night, 2 nights, try and stay warm. We encourage them to go for sure. Today, while I was out on the bus, I fell at one of the encampments because of the snow. I slipped and fell. I can't, I was glad that I was done. It was the end of my day. So I could go home, change into dry, warm clothes. When they fall, walking the same path I walked, they don't have somewhere where they can go change into dry, warm clothes. Chances are what they have is cold because it's been packed in a bag that's been sitting outside. May even be damp that they're putting on.
Mm.
So we do encourage them as much as possible, even if we can get them to go there to the shelter for even a shower to get them to warm up. Go have a shower, have dinner. You don't have to stay the night. Just go and do that. Or go to day space today. Get, today's lunch. Just go have lunch in 20 minutes. Head down there. Whatever we can do to get them inside for short periods of time, even, is what we try to do. Have you go to the library, maybe just go get your internet card, maybe look on the library for an apartment, right, to get them inside, even though it'll be something that they can be doing as well. But go to the library. Oh, I got my phone, I can just scroll Kijiji. Yeah, but go to the library where it's warm. So
And the
doing things
libraries are
like,
so community minded, like so
yes,
kind and
our
welcoming.
Woodstock's library is amazing.
Mhm.
They all are amazing, all
They
our
all are, yeah.
libraries, yeah. So just we do encourage them to go anywhere that they can be for even short periods of time to stay warm.
I'm going to kind of veer off a little bit from maybe the human element, which is sort of the focus and the point of this conversation. But I don't think we could really, in fairness, talk about encampments and what's happening across our community and of course every other, without also talking a little bit about the concerns that citizens have, the NIMBYism, which is the not in my backyard ism, that people understand. They might, citizens might understand the need for encampments or how them, why they spring up, but don't want it nearby where they live. This is not a unique phenomena for Oxford County. This happens everywhere. So we see a lot, especially the negative stuff. And so, Grant, I'm going to kind of go over to you, but we've seen a lot of like sort of awful internet things, social media. We've read a lot about bylaw changes and what the rules and the laws are going to be or have been specific to encampments. We've seen bulldozing and some of that heavy-handed approach that you mentioned before. And then we see and hear from people in our community who say, well, why didn't the municipality fix this? Why isn't the municipality shutting it down? Like, why aren't they doing something? And often things are being done. And then the flip side is often the things they want done can't be done. And so, it's not an easy answer and it's not a one level government solution, but could you just speak a little bit to help people understand the complexity of wanting something done and what can be done from a sort of that bylaw municipal kind of lens?
Yeah, so it's a very long process that's very cumbersome and has a lot of nuance, okay? And from all of our teams, from outreach all the way to bylaw, all the way to parks operations or to waste management, whatever the situation might be. And it really takes everybody working together and again identifying the needs of what someone might need and then removing those barriers to move somebody in. Now, there is a lot of case law and there is a lot of legislation that has already occurred, and we're not immune to that regardless of where we live, right? So if it's Ontario and there's been a situation that's happened in Toronto or in Hamilton or in Waterloo, that affects all of us because there's decisions made in court as to what we are capable of. Now, a private citizen with private land that they find a tent, someone's sleeping in a tent in their back 40 of their farm, that's a different situation. That's private property that that person owns. That person has the right to call the police and they can evict that person should they wish to. But when you're a municipality, we have certain responsibility and we have to be able to act in good faith and we have to show due diligence in that we've made every attempt to get somebody into low barrier accessible shelter, right? And it's not just, yeah, we have a temporary part-time shelter where someone can sleep tonight. No, we have to be able to give them somewhere to go before we can move them physically, remove them, or trespass them from that property. It is a very fine balance, and there is a room to enforce our bylaws when necessary. So, in a perfect world, if we had a very low barrier shelter that could house everybody who needed it in town, and we go up, we've met with somebody a few times, we've identified what their needs are, and we're able to move on to that next level. And we're like, hey, we got a spot for you. You can bring all your stuff. We're going to help you. We're going to get you to move inside. Okay, great. That person still says, no, you know what? All my friends are here. I've been living outside. I kind of like living in the woods. I've built myself a structure or a house and I've got a good routine. And now I'm putting this at a very high level, right? Where this is an imaginary person here,
Mm-hmm.
but it does happen from time to time where, someone wants to stay where they're at. If we've done everything we can within our power to provide adequate space, adequate shelter, adequate housing for that person to move into, and they deny our services, and we've tried a few times, we do have the power to enact our bylaws of no trespassing, no tents or structures in our parks. So that is there for us to rely on. However, again, it is that balance of treating humans as humans and also recognizing that unless we have that space to move someone into, then we can't just move them along to somewhere else because, as we discussed earlier, there's no value in that for the client, there's no value in that for the city, there's no value in that for the community. So we really try to look to where the value is and what we're going to get the most out of it in our approach. And again, it's on a person by person, client by client basis.
That's treating people as humans really matters. I mean, everyone deserves to be treated with dignity and respect, and housing is a human right. And unfortunately, we don't have as you said, we don't have the options necessarily to meet people's needs. So I think that for what people who are at home wondering, I think that was a really good overview of some of the more challenging pieces that we certainly hear about. Do we know of any community, not we, you, I know nothing. Do we know of any community that has actually been able to put like a good variety of services and supports in place where maybe they actually have been able to eliminate encampments? Is anyone familiar with that? No.
I can say that and sorry, I won't take away from the rest of the panel. Toronto was unique in that they have a lot of resources. They also have all of their city services, social services, and everything under one umbrella. So they can
Mhm.
make all those decisions unilaterally, working together and work to get people inside. They have housed countless people. But even in a situation like that, with, all the budget, all the resources, all the staff that you can throw at the problem, they're in higher numbers now than we were in 2021. And it's often, unfortunately, a situation too, is if communities spread word around, right? And again, the homelessness community is a community like any other, where people meet, people talk, people share stories. If there are available resources in one particular area, that's where people tend to go to try and access those resources. And then it's a bigger impact on that town. And that can be a large municipality like Toronto, or it can be the biggest tier in a two-tiered government like we are in, say, Woodstock and Oxford County, for example.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think also on that, um, we see a lot of things. We see a lot of things on social media. We get a lot of news and everything. I think a municipality that really comes to mind is St. Thomas. Oftentimes, people say that St. Thomas has eliminated encampments, that they have figured it out to follow suit type of thing. It's not it goes back to displacement and everything that we had talked about. If an encampment pops up, they immediately take it down. It doesn't mean that they're not popping up. They're still popping up. They're taking them down, and it goes back to everything that Grant and Patty talked about how hard and how traumatic it is to constantly being displaced from your home.
And the encampments are just going deeper and deeper into where they're not being found in St. Thomas. They're just not as visible.
Which makes providing services harder and harder, I assume.
Correct.
I would assume so too.
Mhm. And so now I'm going to segue to community members, because I think a lot of people who are joining us tonight and participating, at future viewings, people really care. They see this as a social issue that matters to them and their community. They don't want to see fellow citizens suffering. They want to make a difference. And so for people who are joining us who really want to do something, they want to make a difference, what can they do? Like, what are some of the things that maybe someone at home could do to have a positive impact in this particular situation?
Yeah, I think
So I would start with, like we said in the beginning, just smiling at people and saying hi, right? Start with the simple stuff. And it depends where your level of comfort is at as well. Sit down, have a conversation with them, get them a coffee, things like that. We do not advise people to go out to the encampments. Um, that is not a good idea. It isn't always safe for everyone out there. And not that people are dangerous. They're just walking into a situation that they're unfamiliar with. The people in the encampments may be unfamiliar with them. We all have bad days. I have bad days where if someone comes to me that I might not know, I might not be the happiest person either. I know that's strange for people, but
God.
it does happen. um,
Not you,
Amanda,
Amanda.
I'm gonna
I
I'm,
know.
I'm gonna
And
jump in really quick, Amanda. It's those are their homes. If someone was walking into my home, I would not be happy.
Yeah. And
absolutely.
actually, that was my next question. So I want to know, what can people do? And then what do we not want people to do? What do we advise against? Because, even things like we've seen so many well-intentioned, kind-hearted folks who might be bringing, I don't know, knit scarves or meals, but without understanding some of the ripple effect, right? So what would be beyond not going to an encampment on your own, leaving that to the service organizations that that have trained staff or trained volunteers who are, active? What are some of the other things, whether it's even not going to the encampment, but for folks who want to donate, what are the things that people might think, oh, I could give someone this, but it's really not going to be helpful after all?
So I
So
think
things that are used are fine, but things that are well used is not. So we get some things definitely that are overused and not really good for anybody. So clothing with holes in it, if you're not going to wear it because it has holes and stains all over it, they're still humans, right? Half bottles of things like shampoos, conditioners, anything that's been used partially, we can't guarantee what's in that bottle. So we worry about giving it to someone else if it's not a new bottle. Food that's expired. People think, oh, it's still okay. It's, only past 3 months. That's thank you. Your heart is in the right place, but we can't give that to somebody. There's still stipulations on what we can give out.
Yeah.
And we do try to make sure everyone is treated the way that we would want to be treated. If I was homeless, would I want this? Like, I'm homeless. I'm not desperate, and I should have choices in my life. When I'm out there, if I can, I'll give them the choice. Do you want white socks or black socks? Down to the simple color of socks. And they're happy. They're happy that they have that simple choice.
People deserve to have some choices. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
I
Val.
think a big part of it is I know a lot of people are very hesitant about financial donations, but organizations know what to get with that money. So whether that money is going through United Way, going through the Mobile Health Outreach Bus, going to any other organization, the organization knows what the people need. So during the winter, they might need hand warmers, and that's something that might be running low on through that organization. They know that they can purchase that. A big part is connecting with the agencies that provide resources. You're always welcome. Anyone's always welcome to give a call Kelly, to Amanda, to Operation Sharing and say, hey, I want to donate. What do you need at the moment? What do people need to make sure that we're really getting them the resources and the stuff that they truly do need at the moment?
And we try really hard to keep up at United Way with that information through our partners, because we do have folks who call here. We have businesses, companies where they want to do a drive, they want to engage their employees. And so we try to be able to give them the information so they're collecting the right thing, or the thing for the here and now. And then to your point, Val, about donating money, a perfect example is we were just able to leverage through an incredible buying deal, sleeping bags and outdoor supplies for individuals who are living rough, at a minimal cost, but so we could leverage $1 and make it literally into $10 or $20 worth of product. And so a really great return on investment when those opportunities arise. And so above and beyond a financial donation, and of course, from a United Way perspective, that's always something that we want to manage and maneuver, but also volunteering. We know that people want to volunteer. People are really interested in making a difference. There's lots of ways they can. We try hard to connect them. I think some of you, your organizations can utilize volunteers, or again, also connect volunteers to to programs. What are some of the other ways in which people can make a difference?
I think
I do
Participating
just
in
want to say on behalf of
fundraisers.
Parks, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Sorry, I missed that, Amanda.
I said participating in big fundraisers. So like coldest night of the year is coming up, right? And so there's one in Woodstock, Tillsonburg, and Ingersoll. So giving in your own community with things like that is huge, because you can give your time, or you can give a little donation to someone doing it, put a team in, and things like this. I think that's huge. Wherever your heart directs you to go, right? Find your passion. And if you don't know it, call an agency and we'll absolutely be like, have you tried here? I would really like to give back, but I don't know. Try this one. What about it, right?
And Grant, you were going to add something?
I just wanted to say for municipal workers everywhere, even if you're really well intentioned and you have a great bag of really great quality used clothes, just don't be so presumptuous that someone might want your style of clothing or it might not fit them or whatever the situation might be. And dropping those off in parks or in public spaces really just adds to the tax dollar cleanup costs because they'll become wet, they'll become soiled, they'll become discarded, and our staff will then go in and clean them up. So, like everybody else is here, and just tag on, support your social services, support the organizations that know how to spend that money wisely and really help people out.
Which is great because what we don't know what we don't know. And so again, it's well-intentioned, kind-hearted souls. The other thing I'm going to add, specific to individuals who want to make a difference, advocate for change. Advocate at any level of government and all levels of government for fair and reasonable living wages, for appropriate Ontario Disability Support payments, for investment in housing, for investment in mental health and addiction services, for investment in all the things that matter. Your voice matters as a community member and as a voting citizen. And we really need to speak loudly on why all of these things matter and how they can truly make the difference in people's lives. So we're down to our last 5 minutes, and I'm going to ask each of you if you have one takeaway that you would like people to leave here this evening knowing about encampments, and in particular the individuals who might be living in encampments and their experience. What would be your one thing that you want people to remember? Val, how about I start with you?
Um, they're humans. They're humans just like any of us. They deserve respect, empathy, and they just want connection like any of us do. I think just always having that in mind, that no matter the path of life and how they ended up there, why there, they're humans above all.
Amanda?
Yeah, I would echo what Val said. Take 2 minutes out of your day and say hello to somebody, have a conversation with them if they're in a place to have that. Start getting friendly with somebody that you see every day on your path to work. Start with the hello and the smile as you walk by, and eventually, like Grant said, you introduce yourself. Hi, I'm Amanda. What's your name? A month down the road after so many smiles and hellos. And then eventually you bring a coffee. Morning, John. Brought you a coffee today, right?
Or
And just
Timmy's gift
like Val said,
card. Yeah. I think Amanda's frozen there for my, this again is the beauty of Zoom. Grant, your one takeaway.
I would say that the to be your own biggest advocate for change, we have two elections this year. Please vote. Whatever your political stripe is, do the research, see what your party of interest is saying, what they're going to do to make the change and to really help people. Because really, municipalities can't do this on our own. The United Way can't do it on their own. We need to start all the way at the top and trickle all the way down, and we all need to be pointing in the same direction. So please spread the word to everybody you know, get out and vote for the people that you think will make the right change, whatever your political stripe is.
Patty?
I think the biggest takeaway that I'd like you guys to all take into account is that this isn't a choice, right? A lot of us have to do this, right? Um, we don't have the financial abilities that everyone has to be able to put a roof over our heads. And then also, not everyone who's experiencing homelessness has an addiction or mental health concern.
Yeah, so let's not generalize or stigmatize. Mhm. Um, you've captured so many of what I would want to mention for folks to remember. I would also like to say that we are so fortunate to have amazing organizations doing amazing work, often with very limited budgets. So it's not that we don't have people in the trenches trying to do the work every day. We just need sometimes more of the services. We need some better resources to expand services or to, again, meet people where they're at. And my shameless plug for United Way is United Way Oxford, our board believes that the answer to homelessness is housing, and it's a deeply affordable, supportive housing. It is the one thing that we know with that housing first model, and we're so proud to have our partners at the Oxford County Community Health Center doing some amazing work with us on transitional housing. And the County of Oxford has recently invested additional dollars, and soon we'll have additional transitional housing in Ingersoll. So it'll be Ingersoll, Tillsonburg, and Woodstock. It makes the world of difference. It is a best practice. The outcomes are phenomenal. And if you want to learn more about United Way Oxford's Lighthouse transitional programs, please visit our website to do so. I would like to thank all of our panelists this evening for your insight, your wisdom, and your incredible compassion. I'd also like to thank everyone who's joining us for caring about your community and all of the people in it, and your desire to learn more about homelessness, housing insecurity, encampments, and what we can do as a community to wrap around and lift people up to ensure everyone is happy, healthy, safe, and have what they need to thrive. For people who want to join United Way Oxford and the CHC in our work providing supportive transitional housing, please visit, as I said, visit our website. Please consider making a donation. Every dollar supported for these programs goes directly in our community for transitional housing programs. It makes a difference. It truly changes lives. Visit unitedwayoxford.ca to learn more and sign up for our newsletter. We only do one a month, but we really try and connect people to information about programs and services, upcoming events, and important topics just like this one. So thank you all for joining us. Thank you everyone at home. I hope that you have learned a little more about encampments and have information now that you feel you can make a difference in the community, because it takes a village. Thank you and good night, everyone.